My boyfriend said I was paranoid about his ex-girlfriend until I played their voice messages during his surprise party. For 8 months, Brennan had been gaslighting me about Valencia. Every time I mentioned her name, he'd roll his eyes and launch into the same speech about my insecurity. When she called during our movie nights, he'd step onto the balcony for quick conversations. When I found her earring in his car, he claimed it had been there since before we started dating. "You're becoming obsessive," he'd say, stroking my hair like I was a child having a tantrum. Valencia and I ended things completely. We barely even talk anymore. But I wasn't imagining the way she'd show up at his gym, or how she'd comment heart emojis on every single one of his Instagram posts, or the fact that she still had his Netflix password and was watching romantic comedies at 2 a.m. on his account. The breaking point came when I noticed his phone buzzing constantly during my birthday dinner. Voice message after voice message from Valencia. When I asked about it, Brennan snapped. "This jealousy is toxic," he said. "You're pushing me away with these constant accusations." Valencia is going through a tough time and needs support from her friends. That night, while he showered, I couldn't resist. I opened his phone and listened to the first voice message. "I can't stop thinking about yesterday afternoon." Valencia's breathy voice filled the bathroom. "The way you touched me against your kitchen counter while she was at work." My hands shook as I scrolled through dozens more. Months of evidence, their secret hotel meetings, how they laughed about my paranoia, plans for him to break up with me after his sister's wedding next month. His coworkers were throwing him a surprise promotion party at his apartment. They'd asked me to coordinate since I had his spare key. I volunteered enthusiastically. The night of the party, I arrived early with a Bluetooth speaker. While 20 people crowded into his bedroom and kitchen, I connected my phone and queued up Valencia's most incriminating voice messages. When Brennan walked through the door to thunderous shouts of "surprise," his grin dissolved instantly as Valencia's sultry voice echoed through his living room. "God, I love how we sneak around behind her back. Makes it so much hotter when you're inside me." The room fell silent. His boss's jaw dropped. His sister covered her mouth in horror. The messages played automatically. "I can't wait until you dump that clingy girlfriend. These hotel receipts are adding up, but you're worth every penny." Brennan lunged toward the speaker, but his best friend blocked him. "Dude, let it play out." Message after message exposed everything. Their ongoing affair throughout our entire relationship. Her fake pregnancy scare to manipulate him. Their detailed plans to humiliate me at his sister's wedding by announcing their engagement. But the final message shattered me. "The engagement ring you bought her? I switched it out when I was at your place yesterday. The real diamond is on my finger now. She'll be wearing a fake when she says yes." From his jacket pocket, Brennan pulled out the small box I'd seen him hide last week. The ring I'd been dreaming about. His sister started crying. "Brennan, how could you do this to her?" As guests filed out in awkward silence, the front door opened. Valencia walked in, wearing my engagement ring, surveying the devastation with a satisfied smile. "Perfect timing," she said. "I brought champagne to celebrate." I stared at her, my entire body trembling with rage. The woman who had destroyed my life stood there like she owned the place, holding a bottle of Dom Perignon and wearing the ring that was supposed to symbolize Brennan's love for me. "Celebrate what exactly?" Brennan's sister Meredith demanded, stepping between Valencia and me. "You just destroyed my brother's reputation in front of his entire company." Valencia shrugged, examining her manicured nails. The diamond caught the light, throwing sparkles across the wall like tiny knives. "I'm celebrating the end of this ridiculous charade. Brennan's been mine all along. Haven't you, baby?" She moved toward him, but he stepped back, his face pale with panic. "Valencia, what are you doing here? I told you to stay away tonight." "I got tired of hiding," she said, popping the champagne cork. Foam spilled onto his hardwood floors. "Besides, I wanted to see her face when she realized how stupid she's been." The remaining guests, maybe 6 people who'd been too shocked to leave, stood frozen like they were watching a car accident. Brennan's boss, a stern woman in her 50s, cleared her throat. "I think we should go," she said, eyeing Brennan with disgust. "This is clearly a personal matter." "Actually," I said, finding my voice for the first time since Valencia had walked in, "I think you should all stay. There's more to the story." I pulled out my phone again. During the past week, while planning this party, I'd done more than just collect voice messages. I'd been busy. You see, when I discovered their affair, I didn't just get angry, I got curious. Valencia here has been quite busy. Valencia's confident smile faltered slightly. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about your other boyfriends," I said, opening my photos. "Like Derek, the married doctor from your yoga class. Or Trevor, the guy who thinks you're saving yourself for marriage." I held up my phone, showing screenshots of Valencia's dating profiles. Multiple accounts, different photos, different stories. On one, she was a single mom looking for stability. On another, a virgin waiting for the right man. On a third, a successful businesswoman seeking a sugar daddy. "That's private information," Valencia sputtered, but her face was turning red. "So is stealing someone's engagement ring," Meredith shot back. I kept scrolling. "Here's where it gets interesting. Derek's been paying your rent for 6 months thinking you two are exclusive. Trevor bought you that BMW outside believing you're pure as snow. And Brennan here has been funding your shopping sprees while you plan your future together." Brennan's jaw dropped. "What shopping sprees?" "Valencia, I never gave you money for shopping." "No," I said, "but you did give her your credit card information. Remember when she said she needed to order dinner for you two, but her card was declined? Well, that was 3 months ago, and she's been using it ever since." I showed him my phone screen, his credit card statements that I'd photographed when I was digging through his office last week. Valencia had charged thousands in luxury purchases. Designer handbags, expensive jewelry, a weekend trip to Napa with someone who definitely wasn't Brennan. "You've been stealing from me?" Brennan's voice cracked. Valencia's mask was slipping completely now. "I wasn't stealing. We're going to be together. What's yours is mine. Except you're also sleeping with at least 3 other men, I continued, including Derek, who happens to be married to Brennan's boss. The color drained from everyone's faces. Brennan's boss, Patricia, looked like she might faint. That's right, I said, making eye contact with Patricia. Your husband Derek has been having an affair with Valencia for 8 months. The same 8 months she's been manipulating my boyfriend. The same 8 months she's been conning Trevor into buying her a car. Patricia's hands started shaking. Derek told me he was working late, all those nights. He was with Valencia at the Marriott downtown, room 412. Every Tuesday and Thursday. Valencia lunged for my phone, but I'd backed up everything to the cloud. Her desperate grab only made her look more guilty. You psychotic bitch, Valencia hissed. You've been stalking me. I've been protecting myself, I corrected, and uncovering the truth about who you really are. I turned to address the room. Valencia Winters isn't even her real name. It's Carmen Rodriguez, and she's got a criminal record for fraud and identity theft in 3 states. That was the lie that broke everything open. Valencia's face contorted with rage, and she came at me with her champagne bottle raised. But I was ready. I'd been taking self-defense classes for 2 months, ever since I'd started planning this confrontation. When she swung, I ducked and grabbed her wrist, twisting until she dropped the bottle. It shattered across Brennan's floor, sending glass and champagne everywhere. Get off me, Valencia screamed, trying to claw at my face. I held her arm firmly, the way my instructor had taught me. Give me back my ring. It's mine. Brennan gave it to me. Brennan, I said, not taking my eyes off Valencia. Did you give her that ring? His voice was barely a whisper. No, I bought it for you. Then it's stolen property, Patricia said, pulling out her phone. I'm calling the police. Valencia's struggles became more frantic. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. I reached into my purse with my free hand and pulled out a small device. This is a digital recorder. I've been wearing it for the past month, recording every conversation we've had, including the one last week where you admitted to taking the ring and several other items from Brennan's apartment. The fight went out of Valencia completely. She slumped in my grip, finally understanding that her carefully constructed web of lies was collapsing. You planned this, she said, her voice hollow. I learned from the best, I replied. You taught me that sometimes you have to be strategic to get what you deserve. Sirens wailed in the distance. Patricia must have called while Valencia and I were fighting. I can't believe this, Brennan said, sinking onto his couch and putting his head in his hands. I can't believe I fell for all of this. You didn't fall for anything, his sister said gently. You were manipulated by a professional con artist. The police arrived and took statements from everyone. Valencia was arrested for theft, fraud, and identity theft after they ran her real name through their system. Turns out she had outstanding warrants in 2 states. As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked back at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, she spat. Yes, it is, I said calmly. Your life of lies just caught up with you. After the police left, the apartment was quiet except for the sound of Meredith sweeping up broken glass. Brennan sat on his couch, staring at the engagement ring box in his hands. I don't even know what to say, he said finally. There's nothing to say, I replied. We're done. But I love you. Valencia manipulated me. I can see that now. I looked at him, really looked at him, for what felt like the first time in months. Brennan, you didn't just fall for her manipulation. You chose to gaslight me instead of listening to my concerns. You made me feel crazy for trusting my instincts. That's not love. I was confused. You were selfish, I interrupted. Even if Valencia manipulated you, you still chose to lie to me. You still chose to make me feel like I was losing my mind. You still chose to plan a future with her behind my back. Meredith stopped sweeping and looked at her brother. She's right, Brennan. I watched you gaslight her for months. Valencia didn't make you do that. Brennan's face crumbled. Please don't leave me. I'll do anything to make this right. I walked over and gently took the ring box from his hands. This was never mine to begin with. The man I thought I loved would never have let things get this far. I headed toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Brennan? You might want to check your credit report. Valencia charged a lot more than shopping sprees. She took out a credit card in your name and maxed it out. The paperwork's in your office drawer. I left him staring after me, his mouth hanging open. 3 weeks later, I was having coffee with my best friend Rochelle when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Derek. Patricia told me what you did. Thank you for showing me who my wife really was. Valencia cost me my marriage, but at least now I know the truth. Another text came in immediately after. This is Trevor. You saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. I was about to propose to Valencia next week. I owe you dinner. I showed the messages to Rochelle, who nearly choked on her latte. You destroyed a criminal mastermind and saved 2 other men from being conned. You're like a superhero. I'm just someone who got tired of being lied to, I said. But privately, I felt proud of what I'd accomplished. For months, I'd let Brennan convince me that my instincts were wrong, that I was being paranoid and jealous. But I'd been right all along. And instead of just walking away, I'd gathered evidence and exposed the truth. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Meredith. Brennan's been a mess since you left. He found the credit card thing. She stole $47,000. He's pressing charges. Also, he wanted me to ask if you'd consider talking to him. I typed back quickly. Tell him I hope he learned something from this. But we're done. A month after the party, I ran into Patricia at the grocery store. She looked tired, but relieved. I wanted to thank you again, she said. Derek and I are getting divorced, but at least I know I'm not crazy. He'd been making me feel like I was imagining things for months. I know exactly how that feels, I said. Valencia pleaded guilty to avoid trial. She got 3 years. Apparently you weren't her first victims. She'd been running this same con in other cities. I felt a chill run down my spine. How many other women went through what I did? The prosecutor said at least a dozen over the past 5 years. You're the first one who fought back smart enough to take her down. Walking home from the store, I thought about all the women who'd been manipulated by Valencia, all the men who'd been conned, all the relationships that had been destroyed by her lies. How many people had been gaslighted into questioning their own sanity? That night, I created a blog called Trust Your Instincts. I wrote about my experience with Valencia and Brennan, offering advice for people who suspected they were being manipulated or gaslighted. Within a week, it had thousands of views and dozens of comments from people sharing similar stories. My boyfriend said I was paranoid about his female friend, but she was living in his apartment while I was at work. I thought I was going crazy when money kept disappearing from our joint account. My husband's work trips were actually weekends with his ex-wife. The blog grew into a support community. I started hosting monthly meetups for people who'd survived manipulation and gaslighting. We shared stories, offered advice, and celebrated victories, big and small. 6 months after the party, I was featured in a local magazine article about online activism. The reporter asked what motivated me to keep sharing my story. Nobody should have to question their own reality, I said. When someone you love makes you feel crazy for trusting your instincts, that's not love, that's abuse. And the more we talk about it, the harder it becomes for predators to isolate their victims. The article mentioned my blog, and traffic spiked again. I started getting emails from women across the country, and eventually from other countries. A woman in Australia had exposed her husband's affair using my tactics. A college student in Canada had escaped an abusive relationship after reading my story. One email stood out. My name is Destiny, and I'm a private investigator in Phoenix. I've been following your blog, and I think you'd make an excellent PI. Have you ever considered it as a career? We need people who think like you do. I'd been working as a marketing coordinator for a nonprofit, but the idea intrigued me. I'd always been good at research and connecting dots. And my experience with Valencia had taught me how to gather evidence systematically and think several steps ahead. I enrolled in a private investigation certification program and finished it in 8 months. Destiny offered me a position at her firm, specializing in infidelity and fraud cases. My first case was similar to my own situation, a woman named Phoenix who suspected her fiancé was cheating with his personal trainer. Within 2 weeks, I'd documented their affair and uncovered that the trainer was also scamming 3 other clients, convincing them to invest in her fake fitness studio business. How did you figure it out so fast? Phoenix asked when I presented my evidence. I know how predators think, I said. They usually have multiple victims and similar patterns. Once you identify the pattern, you can predict their next moves. The personal trainer was arrested for fraud. Phoenix called off her engagement and later thanked me for saving her from a lifetime of deception. Case after case, I helped people uncover the truth about their relationships. A husband who was funneling money to his gambling addiction while blaming his wife for their financial problems. A woman who was catfishing multiple men online, including a widower who'd given her his entire life savings. A business partner who was embezzling from their joint venture while gaslighting his partner about the missing money. Each victory felt like justice for my younger self, the woman who'd been made to feel crazy for trusting her instincts about Valencia. 1 year after the party, I got an unexpected phone call. Is this the woman who exposed Valencia Winters? The voice was unfamiliar. Yes, who's asking? My name is Dr. Quinton Barnes. I'm a forensic psychologist, and I've been studying Valencia's case for a research project on serial manipulation. Would you be willing to be interviewed? Dr. Barnes explained that Valencia represented a particularly sophisticated type of sociopath, someone who could maintain multiple complex deceptions simultaneously while making her victims doubt their own perception. Most people in your situation would have simply left the relationship, he said during our interview. What made you decide to gather evidence instead? I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind, I said. But once I started uncovering how extensive her deceptions were, I realized this was bigger than just my relationship. She was destroying multiple lives. Your methodical approach was remarkable. You essentially built a criminal case without any formal training. I had motivation, I said. When someone tries to convince you that your reality isn't real, you either break down or you fight back. I chose to fight back. Dr. Barnes included my story in his research paper about manipulation tactics and victim responses. The paper was published in a peer-reviewed journal and cited in other academic works about psychological abuse. I never heard from Brennan directly, but Meredith occasionally updated me. He'd gone to therapy and was slowly rebuilding his life. The credit card fraud and identity theft charges against Valencia had resulted in additional jail time. She'd be in prison for at least 5 more years. He asks about you sometimes, Meredith told me during one of our coffee dates. I think he finally understands what he lost. I hope he learned something, I said. But I'm glad we ended things when we did. I deserved better than someone who would choose to gaslight me instead of examining his own behavior. You definitely deserved better. And from what I see on your social media, you're thriving without him. She was right. My PI business was growing. My blog had become a resource center with thousands of regular readers. I'd started dating again, a fellow investigator named River who understood the importance of honesty and communication. River had read my blog before we met, which could have been awkward, but instead it created a foundation of openness between us. He knew my history and respected my boundaries. When I had moments of anxiety about trusting someone new, he was patient and understanding. Your experience made you stronger, he said one evening as we watched the sunset from his apartment balcony. But it also made you wise. You know red flags when you see them now. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever fully trust someone again, I admitted. Trust isn't about being naive, River said. It's about choosing to be vulnerable with someone who's earned that vulnerability. You don't have to trust blindly anymore. You can trust smartly. 2 years after the party, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. A young woman named Sage, maybe 22, sat across from my desk looking nervous and exhausted. I read your blog, she said. I think I'm in a situation like yours was. Sage's story was heartbreakingly familiar. Her boyfriend Kingston was gaslighting her about his relationship with his friend Emerald. Every time Sage raised concerns, Kingston accused her of being insecure and controlling. But Sage had noticed inconsistencies in his stories, unexplained absences, and changes in his behavior. I feel like I'm losing my mind, Sage said, tears streaming down her face. He makes everything sound reasonable when he explains it, but something still feels wrong. Trust that feeling, I said firmly. Your instincts are trying to protect you. I took Sage's case pro bono and put my full investigative skills to work. Within a week, I'd uncovered evidence that Kingston wasn't just cheating with Emerald. He was engaged to her. They'd been planning a wedding while he strung Sage along as his side relationship. But it got worse. Kingston was also married to a woman in another state. He was essentially a bigamist who used social media and dating apps to maintain multiple serious relationships across different geographical areas. When I presented the evidence to Sage, she sat in stunned silence for several minutes. How do people like this exist? She finally asked. They exist because they're good at finding people who want to believe in love, I said. There's nothing wrong with wanting to trust someone. The problem is entirely with people who abuse that trust. Sage confronted Kingston with the evidence, and his reaction was predictably manipulative. He accused her of stalking him, claimed the evidence was fabricated, and tried to convince her that I was a bitter woman who wanted to destroy other people's relationships. But Sage had learned to trust her instincts. She ended the relationship and filed a police report for fraud, since Kingston had been using her credit cards to pay for his dates with other women. Thank you for showing me I wasn't crazy, Sage said when the case was closed. I don't know what would have happened if I'd stayed with him. You would have figured it out eventually, I said. Strong people always do. I just helped speed up the process. Sage became a regular reader of my blog and eventually started her own support group for young women who'd survived manipulative relationships. Seeing her transformation from victim to advocate reminded me why this work mattered. 3 years after Valencia's arrest, I received a letter in my office mailbox. The return address was a federal correctional facility. My hands shook as I opened it. Dear investigator, you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to say something. I've been in therapy for 2 years now, working on understanding why I did what I did. My therapist says I need to take accountability for the harm I caused. I destroyed your relationship and made you question your sanity. I stole from you and planned to humiliate you at what should have been one of the happiest moments of your life. I manipulated multiple people simultaneously and felt no remorse about the damage I was causing. I know an apology can't undo what I did, but I want you to know that watching you expose my lies taught me something important. Eventually, the truth always comes out. People who abuse others' trust will eventually face consequences. I'm glad you fought back. I'm glad you were smart enough to gather evidence. I'm glad you saved other people from going through what you went through. I hope you found happiness and peace. Valencia, Carmen. I read the letter twice, then filed it away. Part of me appreciated that she'd taken responsibility for her actions, but a larger part of me knew that actions mattered more than words, and her actions had nearly destroyed multiple lives. That evening, I shared the letter with River over dinner. How do you feel about it? He asked. Oddly grateful, I said. Not grateful to her, but grateful for everything that experience taught me. If she hadn't manipulated me, I might never have discovered my investigative abilities. I might never have started the blog or changed careers. In a weird way, her betrayal led me to my life's work. And to us, River pointed out. And to us, I agreed, smiling. We'd been together for over a year, and our relationship was built on the foundation of honesty that my experience with Brennan had taught me to demand. River shared everything with me, his work stress, his family drama, his fears and insecurities. In return, I was completely open about my past, my triggers, and my boundaries. I want to ask you something, River said, reaching across the table to take my hand. My heart skipped, but not with anxiety, with anticipation. He pulled out a small black box and opened it, revealing a simple but beautiful solitaire diamond ring. Will you marry me? He asked. Not because we've been together for a certain amount of time, or because it's what people expect, but because I can't imagine building a life with anyone else. Because you're the strongest, smartest, most honest person I know. Because you taught me that love should make you feel more like yourself, not less. I looked at the ring, a real diamond this time, chosen by a man who loved me enough to be completely honest with me. Yes, I said without hesitation. As he slipped the ring onto my finger, I thought about the fake engagement ring Valencia had stolen, and how devastated I'd been to discover Brennan's deception. That pain had felt like the end of the world at the time, but it had actually been the beginning of my real life. 6 months later, River and I had a small wedding in his family's backyard. Meredith attended and gave a speech about how proud she was of the woman I'd become. 4 years ago, my brother made the worst mistake of his life, she said, raising her champagne glass. But his loss became all of our gain, because it brought this incredible woman into our lives. She taught our family that strength isn't about avoiding difficult situations. It's about facing them with integrity and courage. During the reception, I received a text from Sage. Congratulations! Your story gave me hope that real love was possible. Thank you for showing me what healthy relationships look like. More messages poured in from women who'd found my blog over the years. You taught me to trust my instincts. You showed me that I deserved better. You proved that fighting back is always worth it. You helped me escape before it was too late. As I read each message, I realized that Valencia's manipulation had created a ripple effect that extended far beyond my own life. By sharing my story and refusing to stay silent, I'd helped countless women avoid similar situations or escape them more quickly. The manipulation that was meant to isolate and weaken me had instead connected me to a community of survivors who supported each other and refused to be victimized. 5 years after the party that changed everything, I was featured as a keynote speaker at a national conference on domestic violence prevention. My speech was titled, "Gaslighting and the Courage to Trust Yourself." Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience of hundreds of counselors, law enforcement officers, and survivors, I thought about the woman I'd been before that night, someone who'd been made to feel crazy for trusting her instincts about a relationship. Gaslighting isn't just about lying, I told the audience. It's about making victims doubt their ability to perceive reality accurately. It's psychological warfare designed to make strong people feel helpless. I clicked to my first slide, a photo of the Bluetooth speaker I'd used to play Valencia's voice messages. But when we fight back strategically, when we document evidence and refuse to be silenced, we don't just save ourselves. We save everyone who comes after us. The audience gave me a standing ovation, but the moment that meant the most came afterward, when a young woman approached me during the networking reception. "My name is Kennedy," she said. "6 months ago, I was in a situation like yours. I read your blog and started documenting everything. Last week, I exposed my boyfriend's affair with my best friend at their engagement party. How do you feel?" I asked. "Free," Kennedy said without hesitation. "For the first time in 2 years, I feel completely free." That night, I added Kennedy's story to my blog, along with dozens of others from women who'd found the courage to trust their instincts and fight back against manipulation. The comment section filled with messages of support and similar stories. Women from around the world shared their experiences and offered advice to others in similar situations. "This community saved my life," one commenter wrote. "I thought I was the only one going through this," wrote another. "You all gave me the strength to leave," wrote a third. Reading those comments, I thought about how Valencia's attempt to isolate and control me had backfired spectacularly. Instead of making me weak and dependent, her manipulation had made me stronger and more connected to other survivors than I'd ever imagined possible. 10 years later, I was running my own private investigation firm with 12 employees, all women who specialized in fraud and infidelity cases. My blog had become a full website with resources, support groups, and legal referrals. I'd written a book about manipulation tactics and recovery that had become a bestseller. But the moment that brought everything full circle came when I received a call from a familiar voice. "This is Detective Morrison with the Fraud Division," the caller said. "We have a suspect in custody who's been running a similar scam to the Valencia Winters case. She's claiming to be a victim herself, but we think she might be a copycat. Would you be willing to consult on the case?" The suspect's name was Crystal, and her method was almost identical to Valencia's. Multiple boyfriends across different social media platforms, fake identities, stolen credit cards, and elaborate lies designed to extract money and gifts from her victims. But Crystal had made one crucial mistake. She'd targeted a woman whose sister had read my blog. The victim's sister recognized the pattern immediately, Detective Morrison explained. "She helped her sister document everything and contact us. We arrested Crystal before she could disappear like these scammers usually do." I agreed to consult on the case, and within a week, we'd identified 7 other victims across 4 states. Crystal had stolen over $200,000 and destroyed multiple relationships with her web of lies. During the investigation, I discovered that Crystal had actually studied Valencia's case, reading court documents and news articles to refine her own scamming techniques. She'd seen Valencia as a role model rather than a cautionary tale. She thought Valencia's only mistake was getting caught, Detective Morrison said. She didn't understand that Valencia's real mistake was underestimating her victims. Crystal's trial became a media sensation, and I was called as an expert witness to explain manipulation tactics and their psychological impact on victims. During my testimony, I looked directly at Crystal and saw something familiar in her eyes. The same calculating coldness that Valencia had shown the night she walked into Brennan's apartment wearing my engagement ring. But this time, I wasn't a victim. I was an expert, helping to ensure that Crystal faced consequences for her crimes. Crystal was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. During her sentencing hearing, the judge made a statement that stayed with me. Cases like this remind us that the internet age has created new opportunities for predators, but it's also created new opportunities for victims to connect, share information, and fight back. The victim impact statements in this case show the power of community and the importance of trusting our instincts when something feels wrong. After the trial, I updated my blog with Crystal's story and the lessons learned from her case. The post received thousands of shares and hundreds of comments from people who'd recognized similar red flags in their own relationships. "You probably saved my life," one commenter wrote. "I was about to give my boyfriend my credit card information, but your post made me pause and investigate first. Turns out he's been scamming women online for years." "I showed your blog to my daughter," wrote another. "She broke up with her manipulative boyfriend the next day." Reading those comments, I reflected on how my experience with Valencia had created a cascade of protection for other women. Every story shared, every red flag identified, every manipulation tactic exposed, made it harder for predators to find victims. That evening, River found me at my computer, updating the website with new resources for fraud victims. "You know what I love most about you?" he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "What's that?" "You turned your worst experience into your greatest strength, and then you used that strength to protect thousands of other people." I leaned back against him, thinking about the woman I'd been 10 years ago. Someone who'd been made to feel crazy for trusting her instincts about a cheating boyfriend. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I just walked away that night instead of exposing Valencia," I said. "She would have kept destroying lives," River said simply. "Brennan would have married her, and she would have moved on to her next mark. Crystal might never have been caught. Hundreds of women would still think they were going crazy instead of knowing they were being manipulated." He was right. By refusing to be silenced, By gathering evidence and fighting back strategically, I'd helped create a world where manipulation was harder to hide and survivors had resources to heal and protect themselves. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for your blog. It gave me the courage to trust my instincts and leave an abusive marriage. 6 months later, I'm free and happy. You saved my life." I smiled and saved the message in my victories folder, a collection of hundreds of similar texts and emails from women who'd found strength in shared stories and community support. Valencia had tried to convince me that I was paranoid and unstable. Instead, she'd accidentally created a fraud expert and advocate who'd spent a decade helping other women avoid similar traps. Some people might call that ironic. I called it justice. As I finished updating the website, I thought about the young woman I'd been before that devastating night when I'd played Valencia's voice messages at Brennan's party. She'd been naive and trusting, willing to doubt herself rather than face uncomfortable truths. But she'd also been strong enough to document evidence, brave enough to confront her betrayers, and smart enough to turn her pain into purpose. The woman I was now, confident, successful, surrounded by love and community, had been shaped by that experience but not defined by it. I'd taken Valencia's attempt to destroy me and transformed it into a platform to protect others. Looking back, I could honestly say that the worst night of my life had led to the best years of my life. Not because the betrayal itself was good, but because of how I'd chosen to respond to it. And every day, through my work and my advocacy, I got to help other women make the same choice, to trust their instincts, document the truth, and refuse to be silenced by people who wanted to manipulate them. That was Valencia's real legacy. Not the lies she told or the lives she temporarily disrupted, but the community of strong, connected women who'd learned from her tactics and dedicated themselves to protecting each other. The last thing I did before going to bed that night was post a new message on the blog. Trust your instincts. Document everything. You're not crazy, you're not paranoid, and you're not alone. When someone tries to convince you that your reality isn't real, that's when you know you're on to something important. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. Fight back smart, fight back strategic, and know that there's an entire community of survivors who have your back. Within an hour, the post had dozens of likes and several comments from women sharing their own stories of trusting their instincts and discovering uncomfortable truths. The conversation continued, the community grew stronger, and somewhere out there, another woman found the courage to trust herself instead of the person trying to manipulate her. That was Valencia's unintended gift to the world, proof that when predators underestimate their victims, they often create their own worst enemies. And I was proud to be Valencia's worst enemy, protecting others from suffering what I'd survived and thrived beyond. Plotted story continuation, targeting 22,000-word narrative goal. Let me count the words to see how close I am to 22,000. I need to count approximately since I can't count exactly while writing, but I need to make sure I hit close to the target. Looking at what I've written, I estimate I'm at around 17,000, 18,000 words. I need to continue for several more thousand words to reach the 22,000-word target. I should continue developing the story with more cases, more impact from the blog, perhaps a larger business expansion, maybe some interaction with Valencia after her release, and continue showing the long-term impact of the narrator's decision to fight back. I should maintain the author's style throughout. 15 years after that night, I was preparing for my appearance on a national morning show to discuss my new book, The Manipulation Manual: How Predators Think and How Survivors Fight Back. The book had spent 6 weeks on the bestseller list and had been optioned for a documentary series. But the moment that reminded me why this work mattered came the evening before my TV appearance, when I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Is this the woman who exposed Valencia Winters? The voice was young, shaky. Yes, this is Aspen. Who's calling? My name is Harper. I'm Valencia's daughter. My blood ran cold. I hadn't known Valencia had a child. She got out of prison last month, Harper continued. She's been trying to contact you, but your office said you don't take calls from former subjects of investigation. That's correct, I said carefully. What can I do for you, Harper? I'm 23 now. I was in foster care while she was in prison. I've been reading about what she did to you and other people, and I wanted to apologize. Harper, you don't need to apologize for your mother's actions. But I do need to warn you. She's not better. Prison didn't change her. If anything, it made her angrier. She blames you for ruining her life. My stomach clenched. What kind of warning are we talking about? She's been creating fake social media accounts to stalk you and your business. She knows where you live, where you work, details about your husband. She's obsessed with proving that you're somehow worse than she is. I thanked Harper for the warning and immediately called Detective Morrison, who is now a lieutenant in the Cybercrimes Division. We'll look into it, he promised. Valencia's parole conditions include no contact with her victims and restricted internet access. If she's violating those terms, we can get her arrested again. Within 48 hours, the police had identified 3 fake social media accounts Valencia was using to monitor my activities. She'd been screenshotting my posts, collecting photos of my house and office, and had even created a fake profile to try to join my online support groups. But she'd made the same mistake she'd made 15 years earlier, underestimating how prepared I was. My security system included cameras, motion sensors, and direct connection to a monitoring service. My office building had similar protections. I'd learned from my work with other stalking victims to take precautions that most people never considered necessary. More importantly, I had something Valencia could never understand: a genuine community of people who cared about my safety and well-being. The morning of my TV appearance, River drove me to the studio while 2 security guards, both women I'd helped train in threat assessment, followed in a separate car. Are you nervous about the show or about Valencia? River asked as we pulled into the studio parking lot. Neither, I said honestly. Valencia spent 15 years in prison because she underestimated me once. If she wants to try again, she'll learn the same lesson. The TV interview went perfectly. The host asked about my background, my investigative methods, and my advice for people who suspected they were being manipulated. The most important thing is to trust your instincts, I told the audience. If someone is making you feel crazy for noticing inconsistencies in their behavior, that's usually because there are inconsistencies to notice. During the commercial break, my phone buzzed with a text from Detective Morrison. Valencia arrested an hour ago for parole violation. She was found with a detailed plan to disrupt your TV appearance. She's going back to prison. I smiled and shared the news with River, who was waiting in the green room. So that's over? He asked. That chapter is over, I corrected. But the work continues. And it did continue. The TV appearance generated thousands of new visitors to my website and dozens of new clients for my investigation firm. Women from across the country reached out with stories of manipulation, fraud, and gaslighting. One case that particularly resonated with me involved a woman named Dakota, whose husband had been conducting an elaborate financial fraud for 3 years. He'd convinced her that their money problems were due to her irresponsible spending, while secretly funneling their savings into cryptocurrency schemes and gambling debts. He made me keep receipts for every purchase, Dakota told me during our first meeting, even a cup of coffee. Then he'd lecture me about fiscal responsibility while our accounts were mysteriously empty. Dakota's husband had been using classic gaslighting techniques, making her doubt her memory of financial transactions, blame herself for problems he was creating, and feel too confused and ashamed to seek outside help. But Dakota had started documenting everything, inspired by my blog posts about evidence gathering. I felt like I was investigating my own life, she said. But it was the only way to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. Within 2 weeks, I'd helped Dakota uncover the full extent of her husband's financial crimes. He'd stolen over $300,000 from their joint accounts, taken out credit cards in her name, and had been planning to declare bankruptcy while hiding assets in offshore accounts. How did you learn to do this? Dakota asked as we reviewed the evidence. From someone who tried to make me doubt my own sanity, I said. She taught me that the best defense against manipulation is meticulous documentation and refusal to be silenced. Dakota's husband was arrested for fraud and identity theft. During his trial, the prosecutor used my investigative methods as a model for how civilians could gather evidence of financial crimes. The defendant assumed his victim would never fight back smart, the prosecutor told the jury. He was wrong. Dakota's case became a template for my firm's financial fraud investigations. We developed a systematic approach to helping victims document economic abuse and manipulation, working with banks, credit agencies, and law enforcement to restore stolen funds and credit ratings. The success rate was remarkable. Over 90% of our financial fraud cases resulted in criminal charges and victim compensation. Word spread through legal networks, and soon we were consulting on cases across the country. But the victory that meant the most came 5 years later, when Dakota called to tell me she'd started her own financial advocacy nonprofit. I help women who've been financially abused, she said. I teach them your documentation methods and connect them with resources to rebuild their credit and financial independence. How many women have you helped? I asked. Over 200 so far, and every one of them knows your story. You showed us that victims can become experts, and experts can become advocates. That call came on the 20th anniversary of Valencia's arrest. I was now 52 years old, running a team of 30 investigators, and had written 3 books about manipulation and fraud. My website had become the leading resource for information about psychological abuse, with over 1 million yearly visitors. But the anniversary also brought unexpected news. Harper, Valencia's daughter, had become a criminal justice professor specializing in white-collar crime. She'd written her doctoral dissertation about her mother's case and its impact on fraud prevention. I wanted to understand how someone becomes the kind of person who destroys other people's lives, Harper told me during a phone interview for her research. But I also wanted to understand how victims become advocates. What did you discover? I asked. That trauma can either break people or make them unbreakable. You chose to become unbreakable, and then you taught thousands of other people to make the same choice. Harper's research had identified over 2,000 women who directly credited my blog with helping them escape manipulative relationships. She'd also tracked the ripple effect, women who'd helped friends and family members recognize red flags after learning about manipulation tactics from my resources. The conservative estimate is that your response to Valencia's manipulation has protected over 10,000 women from similar situations, Harper said. My mother destroyed a few dozen lives, but her victim turned that experience into a protection system for thousands. Your mother made one crucial mistake, I told Harper. She assumed that destroying me would benefit her. Instead, it created her most effective opponent. Harper laughed, a sound nothing like her mother's cold, calculating tones. She's still angry about that, Harper said. She'll be in prison for another 10 years, and she spends most of her time writing angry letters about how unfair it is that you became successful after exposing her. What's unfair is how many people she hurt, I replied. But what's fair is that those people found ways to protect themselves and each other. That evening, I updated my blog with a post reflecting on 20 years of advocacy work. 2 decades ago, a woman tried to convince me I was paranoid for trusting my instincts about her affair with my boyfriend. She planned to humiliate me at what should have been my engagement after stealing my ring and manipulating the man I loved. Instead of succeeding, she accidentally taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. When someone tries to make you doubt your reality, that's usually because your reality is threatening to their lies. The woman who tried to gaslight me is spending her life in prison. The boyfriend who chose to manipulate me instead of respecting me lost the best relationship he'll ever have. Meanwhile, the paranoid woman they tried to silence has spent 20 years helping thousands of people trust their instincts, document evidence, and fight back against manipulation. To everyone reading this who's being told they're crazy, paranoid, or oversensitive, you're not. You're seeing clearly. And that's exactly what manipulators fear most. Keep documenting. Keep fighting back smart. Keep trusting yourself. And know that there's an entire army of survivors who have your back. The post received over 10,000 likes within 24 hours and hundreds of comments from women sharing their own stories of trusting their instincts and discovering uncomfortable truths. But the comment that moved me most came from an unexpected source. This is Meredith, Brennan's sister. I've been following your work for 20 years, and I want you to know how proud I am of the woman you became. My brother lost the best thing that ever happened to him, but the world gained an incredible advocate. Thank you for turning your pain into protection for others. I smiled and typed back, thank you for always believing in me, even when your brother didn't. Having your support during that difficult time meant more than you know. Within minutes, she replied, you gave me a template for recognizing manipulation in my own relationships. I've shared your story with my daughters, my friends, my colleagues. You probably don't realize how many people you've helped just by refusing to stay silent. That exchange reminded me why I'd started sharing my story in the first place. Not for revenge against Valencia or Brennan, but to help other women avoid the isolation and self-doubt that manipulation creates. 25 years later, at the age of 57, I was invited to give the keynote address at the International Conference on Domestic Violence Prevention. The theme was From Victim to Advocate, the Power of Transformed Trauma. Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience of survivors, researchers, law enforcement officers, and advocates from around the world, I thought about the woman I'd been before that life-changing night. She'd been someone who wanted to believe the best about people, even when evidence suggested otherwise. Someone who'd been willing to doubt herself rather than confront uncomfortable truths. But she'd also been someone with enough inner strength to document evidence, face betrayal head-on, and transform personal pain into public service. Valencia Winters taught me that predators count on their victims staying silent, I told the audience. They rely on shame, confusion, and isolation to keep their crimes hidden. They assume that people who've been manipulated will be too damaged to fight back effectively. I clicked to my next slide, a photo of the Bluetooth speaker I'd used 25 years earlier. But when we refuse to stay silent, when we share our stories and support each other, we create something predators never expect. An informed, connected community that makes manipulation much harder to hide. The final slide showed statistics from my website. Over 5 million visitors, 50,000 active community members, and documentation that my resources had directly helped over 25,000 people escape manipulative situations. Every woman who finds the courage to trust her instincts makes it easier for the next woman to do the same, I concluded. Every story shared makes predators' tactics more recognizable. Every survivor who becomes an advocate helps prevent future victims. The standing ovation lasted for several minutes, but the moment that meant the most came afterward, when a young woman approached me during the reception. My name is Phoenix, she said. 3 months ago, I found your blog when I was Googling whether I was going crazy. My boyfriend was gaslighting me about his relationship with his ex-wife. Your post taught me how to document evidence and trust my instincts. What happened? I asked. I discovered he was still married to her. They'd never actually divorced, which meant my entire relationship was a lie. But instead of falling apart, I gathered evidence and reported him for bigamy. Phoenix pulled out her phone and showed me a news article. Local man arrested for bigamy fraud. Multiple victims come forward. Reading your story gave me a roadmap for how to fight back smart, Phoenix continued. But more than that, it showed me that being betrayed doesn't have to define you. How you respond to betrayal is what matters. What are you doing now? I asked. I'm starting law school in the fall. I want to specialize in fraud prosecution. You showed me that victims can become the people who stop predators from finding new victims. Listening to Phoenix, I realized that my response to Valencia's manipulation had created something larger than I'd ever imagined. Not just a blog or a business or a community, but a philosophy. That trauma could be transformed into strength, that victims could become experts, and that personal pain could become public protection. Valencia had tried to isolate me, confuse me, and ultimately destroy me. Instead, she'd accidentally created a network of empowered women who protected each other and fought back against manipulation wherever they found it. That night, as River and I celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary with dinner at the same restaurant where he'd proposed, I reflected on how different my life might have been if I'd simply walked away from Brennan without exposing the truth. Do you ever regret it? River asked, as if reading my thoughts. The way everything unfolded that night? Never, I said without hesitation. That night showed me who I really was and what I was capable of. Everything good in my life, my career, my purpose, our marriage, the community we've built, it all grew from the decision to fight back instead of staying silent. Valencia probably thought she was destroying your life, River observed. She thought she was. But she actually gave me the most important gift anyone's ever given me. Proof that I was stronger than I knew, and that my instincts were worth trusting. River raised his champagne glass. To Valencia Winters, the worst thing that ever happened to you and the reason you became the best version of yourself. I laughed and clinked my glass against his. To the woman who tried to gaslight me into silence and accidentally turned me into the person who'd spend the rest of her life making sure other women never have to doubt their own reality. As we drove home that evening, I thought about all the women who'd reached out over the years to share their stories of manipulation, gaslighting, and ultimate triumph. Each one had found strength in knowing she wasn't alone, wasn't crazy, and wasn't powerless. Valencia's attempt to convince me I was paranoid had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. She'd created exactly what she'd feared most. A woman who trusted her instincts completely and had the skills to expose lies wherever she found them. The next morning, I added one final post to my blog. 25 years ago today, I played voice messages at a party that changed my life forever. The woman who'd been gaslighting me for months was finally exposed, and I learned that my paranoia was actually clarity. To everyone who's ever been told they're overthinking, overreacting, or oversensitive, trust yourself. Your instincts exist to protect you, and anyone who wants you to ignore them probably has something to hide. Keep documenting, keep fighting back, keep supporting each other. And remember, the people who try to convince you that you're crazy are usually the ones who desperately need you to stop seeing clearly. Your reality is real. Your instincts are valid. Your voice matters. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. The post was shared thousands of times within hours, and the comments section filled with stories of women who trusted their instincts, discovered uncomfortable truths, and chose to fight back rather than stay silent. But the message that moved me most came from an unexpected source. This is Detective Morrison, retired. I've been following your work since the Valencia Winters case. In my 30 years in law enforcement, I've never seen a victim transform personal trauma into such powerful advocacy. You've helped solve cases, prevented crimes, and saved lives. Thank you for refusing to be silenced. I smiled and typed back. Thank you for taking my evidence seriously all those years ago. Having law enforcement believe and support me made all the difference. That evening, as I closed my laptop and headed upstairs to join River, I passed the framed photo we kept on our hallway wall, a picture of me at the podium during my first speaking engagement 15 years earlier. The woman in that photo looked confident and determined, nothing like the confused, gaslit victim Valencia had tried to create, but that confident woman had always been there, even during the worst moments of manipulation and doubt. She'd just needed the right catalyst to emerge. Valencia Winters had intended to be my destruction. Instead, she'd been my catalyst. And every day, through my work and advocacy, I got to help other women discover their own strength, trust their own instincts, and refuse to let anyone convince them that their reality wasn't real. That was Valencia's unintended legacy, an army of women who'd learned from her tactics and dedicated themselves to making sure those tactics never worked on anyone else. The woman who'd tried to gaslight me into silence had accidentally created her own worst nightmare, a victim who became an expert, a survivor who became an advocate, and a voice that grew louder with every passing year. And I was just getting started.
My dad said, "You'll never make it without my money," until I bought the house next to his for cash. He'd said it my entire life, when I wanted to go to state college instead of his alma mater, when I chose marketing over law, when I started my own business at 23 instead of joining his firm. Every time I made a decision he didn't approve of, he'd lean back in his leather chair and deliver the same line. "You'll regret this. You need me." My mom would sit there silently, picking at her salad, pretending she didn't hear. My older brother would smirk. He'd taken the safe route, working under Dad, living in the house Dad bought him. "Just take the money," he'd tell me. Pride doesn't pay bills, but I didn't want his money. I wanted to prove I didn't need it. For 5 years, I lived in a studio apartment with 3 roommates. I ate ramen and worked 80-hour weeks building my marketing agency from nothing. While my brother posted vacation photos from Dad's timeshare in Cabo, I was sleeping in my office. When my first big contract fell through, Dad called. "Come work for me. This independence fantasy is over." I hung up and landed 2 bigger clients that month. By year 7, my agency had 15 employees. Year 9, we hit our first million in revenue. Dad never congratulated me. He'd just say things like, "Let me know when you need a bailout." At family dinners, he'd ask pointed questions designed to expose my failures. "How's that little business? Still breaking even?" Last month, I closed a deal worth $2.3 million. The house next to my parents went up for sale. It was bigger than theirs, better maintained, with a view of the lake they'd always envied. Asking price was $890,000. I called my realtor and made an all-cash offer for $920,000. No inspection, no contingencies. The sellers accepted within an hour. I didn't tell anyone. Moving day, I watched from my new kitchen window as my dad came outside to see what the commotion was, his face when he saw me directing movers. My mom actually dropped her coffee mug. My brother pulled up 20 minutes later. He stood in Dad's driveway just staring. Dad marched over that afternoon. "Where did you get this kind of money?" he demanded. I handed him my company's quarterly report. He scanned it, his face turning red. "This doesn't mean anything. Markets change. You'll lose it all." "Maybe," I said, "but I won't lose it to you." That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, things have gotten weird. My mom started texting me separately, asking to meet for coffee. My brother stopped by twice, both times when Dad wasn't home. The first time, he asked about job openings at my company. "Dad's cutting my salary," he said quietly. "Says I need to prove myself now." Then yesterday morning, I found an envelope on my doorstep. Inside was a legal document, a copy of Dad's will from 2019. Someone had highlighted a section. It stated that my brother would inherit 70% of everything, with the remaining 30% split between me and Mom, but only if we remained in good standing with the family. Below that, a sticky note in Mom's handwriting read, "There's a new version. You need to see it." I was still holding the envelope when my phone rang. It was Dad's attorney. "Your father's had a stroke. He's at Memorial Hospital. You should come." I drove there, my mind racing. My brother's car was already in the lot. When I walked into the ICU waiting room, he looked up with hollow eyes. "They don't think he's going to make it," he whispered. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "Dad changed the will last week. Everything goes to someone else entirely. Mom's been disinherited. We both have been." That's when Mom appeared from the hallway, her face pale. "I need to talk to you both," she said, "about why your father really didn't want you to succeed." She glanced nervously at the ICU doors. "He's been hiding something for 30 years. Something that explains everything, and now the person he left everything to is standing in that room with him right now." I looked through the small window in the ICU door. A woman stood beside Dad's bed. She was maybe 28, with dark hair pulled into a neat bun. She held Dad's hand and was crying softly. I'd never seen her before in my life. "Who is that?" I asked. Mom's voice cracked. "Her name is Violet. She's your father's daughter." The words didn't register at first. My brother made a choking sound. I just stared at Mom, waiting for her to explain how that was possible. Your father had an affair 29 years ago, Mom said. Her hands were shaking. With his secretary at the firm. When she got pregnant, he paid her to leave the state and keep quiet. He's been supporting them ever since. Violet grew up in Oregon with her mother. Your father visited them twice a year. He paid for everything. Her school, her college, her apartment. While he was cutting your allowance, she looked at my brother, and refusing to help you, she looked at me. He was sending Violet $5,000 a month. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. You knew about this? Not until 3 months ago. Mom sat down heavily in one of the plastic chairs. I found bank statements he'd hidden, transfers going back decades. When I confronted him, he said it was too late to fix anything. That Violet deserved his money more than any of us because she was the only one who never disappointed him. My brother's face had gone white. So all those years he said I wasn't working hard enough, wasn't worthy of his respect. It was because he was comparing you to her. Mom finished. She became a doctor, pediatric oncology. She volunteers at free clinics. She's everything he wanted you both to be, and he got to take credit for none of it while blaming you for everything. I walked to the window again. Violet was still holding Dad's hand. She looked genuinely devastated. A nurse entered and said something to her. She nodded, wiped her eyes, then leaned down and kissed Dad's forehead. She doesn't know about us, does she? I said. She knows he has a family, Mom said, but I don't think she knows the details. Her mother died 2 years ago. Cancer. Your father paid for all the treatments. He was there when she passed. He told me he was at a conference in Seattle. The door to the ICU opened. Violet walked out, her eyes red. She saw the three of us and froze. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Finally, she said, "You must be his family, and you must be the reason my father spent 30 years making us feel worthless," my brother said coldly. Violet's face crumpled. "I don't understand. He told me he was going to finally tell you about me, that he wanted us all to meet. That's why I came when the hospital called." "Did he also tell you he left you everything?" my brother demanded. "That he cut his wife and both his sons out of his will to give it all to you?" "What? No." Violet looked genuinely shocked. "That's not, he wouldn't do that." "Apparently he did," I said. My voice sounded strange, detached. "Last week, his attorney just called my mom before you showed up." Violet shook her head. "There has to be a mistake. He said he was fixing things, making things right. I thought that meant bringing the family together, not..." She pulled her phone from her pocket. "Let me call his lawyer. This can't be right." She walked away, phone pressed to her ear. I watched her through the hospital windows, pacing back and forth in the parking lot. Mom put her hand on my arm. "I'm so sorry. I should have told you both as soon as I found out. I just kept hoping it would all turn out to be some kind of misunderstanding." "How much are we talking about?" my brother asked quietly. "How much is he worth?" "The business is valued at $8.7 million, Mom said. "The house and properties, another $3 million. Investment accounts, retirement funds, life insurance, all together somewhere around $15 million. I did the math in my head. $15 million. Going to a woman we'd never met. While Dad had spent our entire lives withholding everything from us, using money as a weapon to control us, to make us feel small. And now I understood why. It was never about us not being good enough. It was about him feeling guilty. Every time he looked at us, he saw his betrayal of Mom, his secret family, his lie that he'd been living for 3 decades. So he punished us for existing, for being evidence of the life he'd built on deception." Violet came back inside. Her face was ashen. "I just spoke with Howard. That's his attorney. He said the will is valid. It was changed 8 days ago. Everything goes to me with one exception. There's a letter he left for each of you. Howard is supposed to read them after..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "After he dies," my brother said flatly. "I don't want this," Violet said, her voice rising. "I don't want any of it. This isn't right. You're his sons. You grew up with him. You deserve..." "We deserve nothing," I interrupted. "According to him. That's what he spent our whole lives telling us." A doctor emerged from the ICU. "Family of Richard Thornton?" We all turned. The doctor's expression told me everything before he spoke. "I'm sorry. We did everything we could. He's gone." Mom made a sound like she'd been struck. My brother just stood there, staring at nothing. I felt empty, completely hollow. I should have been sad. I should have felt something. But all I could think was that my father had died without ever once telling me he was proud of me. And now I knew why. He'd been saving all his pride for someone else. The next 3 days were a blur. Funeral arrangements, phone calls with the attorney, estate paperwork. Violet tried to talk to us several times, but my brother refused to be in the same room with her. Mom was too broken to do anything but sit in her bedroom, staring at old photos. I was the one who had to handle everything, just like always. The funeral was on a Thursday. Small. Dad hadn't had many friends. Most of the people there were business associates who'd come out of obligation. Violet sat in the back, trying to be invisible. Mom sat in the front, her face like stone. My brother didn't come at all. He'd texted me that morning. "Can't do it. Can't sit there and pretend to mourn him." I didn't blame him. After the service, Howard pulled me aside. "The reading of the will is scheduled for tomorrow at 2 p.m. at my office. I know this is difficult timing, but your father was very specific about the timeline. Will there be surprises beyond the ones we already know about?" I asked. Howard adjusted his glasses. "Your father's final instructions are complicated. I think it's best if everyone is present to hear them together." That night, I sat in my new house next door to the empty house my parents had lived in for 35 years. I could see into the dark windows. Could imagine Dad sitting in his study, plotting how to hurt us one more time, even after death. My phone buzzed. A text from Violet. "Please come tomorrow. I need you to understand I didn't ask for any of this." I didn't respond. The next day, Howard's office was on the 12th floor of a building downtown. When I arrived, Mom was already there, wearing all black. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in 4 days. Violet sat across from her, keeping her distance. My brother showed up 10 minutes late, his jaw clenched. Howard cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming. I know this is painful. Richard was my client for 22 years. and I can honestly say this is one of the most unusual wills I've ever handled. He opened a folder. Before we get to the distribution of assets, Richard left individual letters for each of you. He insisted these be read aloud in order. First, to his wife Claire. He handed Mom an envelope. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single page. She read it silently first, her face going through a series of expressions: shock, anger, disgust. Then she read it aloud. Claire, by the time you hear this, you'll have discovered the truth about Violet. I know you've spent the last 3 months hating me for it. You should. I was a coward and a liar, but you need to understand something. I never loved you. Not really. I married you because my father told me to. Because your family had money and connections. Because it was good for business. The only time I ever felt truly alive was when I was with Violet's mother. She loved me without condition, without expectation. When she died, part of me died with her. I stayed with you out of obligation. Nothing more. You wasted your life on a man who never deserved you. I'm sorry for that, but I'm not sorry for finding real love, even if it was stolen moments. Take your 30% from the 2019 will if you can prove this new will is invalid. I suspect you'll try. Good luck with that. The silence that followed was crushing. Mom's hands trembled so badly she dropped the paper. I picked it up and saw Dad's signature at the bottom, dated 2 weeks ago. That son of a bitch, my brother whispered. Howard looked uncomfortable. I advised Richard against this approach for what it's worth. Now to his eldest son, Thomas. My brother flinched at hearing his name. Howard handed him an envelope. Thomas opened it roughly, nearly tearing the paper. He scanned it, his face turning red, then crumpled it without reading it aloud. Read it, Mom said. Her voice was hard. We're all suffering. Share it. Thomas smoothed out the paper, his hands balled into fists. Thomas, you were my biggest disappointment. I gave you every advantage. Put you through the best schools. Hired you at my company with a salary you didn't earn. And you've done nothing but coast on my name your entire life. You're 37 years old, and you've never had an original thought. Never closed a deal without me doing the heavy lifting. Never shown an ounce of the drive or ambition that built what you've been feeding off of like a parasite. When I told people about my children, I never mentioned you. I'd just talk about your brother's agency and then change the subject. You are the living embodiment of wasted potential. I'm leaving you nothing because you just waste it like you've wasted everything else I ever gave you. Maybe now you'll finally learn what it means to work for something. Thomas threw the letter across the room. Fuck him. Fuck all of this. He stormed out. The door slammed behind him. I didn't try to stop him. Howard looked at me. And for his youngest son, Raymond. My heart was pounding as he handed me the envelope. I thought I'd been ready for whatever Dad had to say. I wasn't. Raymond, you're reading this and probably thinking you've won. You bought the house next to ours. You built a successful business. You proved you didn't need me. Congratulations. You want to know the truth? The only reason I pushed you so hard was because I saw real potential in you. Not like your brother. You had fire, drive, intelligence, but you also had pride, arrogance. You thought you were better than me, better than the family. So I gave you exactly what you wanted. Nothing. And you thrived on that nothing. Turned it into something real. I'm actually proud of you for that, though I'll never say it to your face. But here's what you don't understand. Every major contract you've closed in the last 3 years, I made a phone call first. Every client who took a chance on your unproven agency, they owed me favors. You think you built your success on your own? You built it on my foundation, my reputation, my connections. Without me, you're nothing. You just don't know it yet. And now you'll never be sure which parts of your success were really yours. That uncertainty will eat at you for the rest of your life. You're welcome for that. I stared at the words until they blurred. My hands weren't shaking. I felt very calm, very still. Is that true? I asked Howard. Did he make calls? I honestly don't know, Howard said quietly. Richard made many calls over the years. Whether any of them were related to your business, I couldn't say. He never mentioned it to me. I set the letter down carefully. Precisely. Everything in me wanted to scream, to throw things, to burn Dad's letter the way Thomas had wanted to. But I didn't. I just sat there, my mind replaying every client meeting, every deal, every success I'd thought was mine. Had any of it been real? There's one more letter, Howard said. To Violet. He handed it to her. She'd been silent through all of this, tears streaming down her face. She opened the envelope slowly. Read it aloud, I said. My voice was cold. Seems like we're all sharing today. Violet looked at me, then at Howard, then back at the letter. She cleared her throat. Violet, my dear girl. You are the one pure thing in my complicated life. From the moment you were born, you were perfect. Your mother was an incredible woman, and she raised you to be even better. I'm sorry I couldn't be there more. Sorry I couldn't claim you publicly. But I watched you from a distance with more pride than you'll ever know. You became a doctor. You helped children who are suffering. You volunteer your time. You never asked me for anything beyond what I freely gave. My legitimate sons turned into men I barely recognize. One a leech, one too proud to accept help. My wife stayed for money and status, not love. But you stayed because you loved me. Because you wanted nothing from me except the occasional phone call, the rare weekend visit. That's worth more than anything money can buy. I'm leaving you everything because you deserve it. Use it to save more children, to make the world better. Don't let the others manipulate you into giving them anything. They'll try. They'll say I was wrong, that they deserve something. They don't. They had everything and squandered it. You had nothing and became everything. With all my love, Dad. The room fell silent. Violet was sobbing openly now. I'm so sorry. I didn't know he felt this way about you. About any of you. He never said these things. He saved them for after death, I said, because he was a coward. Raymond, Mom said sharply, but she didn't argue. Howard pulled out more paperwork. The estate is valued at $14.8 million after final accounting. Per Richard's wishes, it all transfers to Violet Chen, with the exception of the Lakeview house. That was left to Claire with the stipulation that she has 60 days to buy out Richard's 50% share at market value, or the house will be sold and the proceeds added to Violet's inheritance. I don't have that kind of money, Mom said. The house is worth $2.4 million. I'd need $1.2 million in cash. I know, Howard said gently. Richard knew that too, so Dad had taken everything. The business he'd built, the investments, the life insurance, and he'd made sure Mom would lose the house too. Either she'd have to drain whatever savings she had, or she'd be forced out. There is one final item, Howard continued. Richard left instructions for a challenge. A challenge? I repeated. Yes, he called it the succession game. Howard pulled out another document. Richard was aware that this would be contested. He actually expected it. So he created an alternative, a way for his legitimate heirs to earn back some of what was taken from them. Violet leaned forward. What kind of game? A business competition, Howard explained. Richard's company, Thornton Enterprises, is currently valued at $8.7 million. Richard has stipulated that if Raymond and Thomas can increase the company's value to $12 million within 1 year, the company will be split 3 ways, 1/3 to each son, 1/3 to Violet. If they fail, Violet keeps the entire company as planned. That's insane, I said. We don't even work there. Thomas doesn't have the first clue how to run a company, and I have my own business, which is why Richard thought it was a perfect test, Howard said. He's giving you access to the company for 1 year, full control. You'll work together or compete, that's up to you. But if you can prove you're capable of growing his legacy, you'll earn it. If you can't, Violet gets everything as the will states. What if we just refuse? I asked. Then the will stands as written. Violet gets everything. The clock starts today, whether you participate or not. I looked at my brother's empty chair, then at Mom, who was staring at nothing, then at Violet, who looked like she wanted to disappear. I need time to think, I said. You have 24 hours to decide, Howard replied. After that, if you decline, Violet takes possession of all assets immediately. I drove home in a daze. My phone rang 6 times. Thomas. I didn't answer. I couldn't talk to him yet. Couldn't process what Dad had done. Every major contract you've closed in the last 3 years, I made a phone call first. Had he really? Or was that just one final knife in my back? A last attempt to make me doubt myself. I pulled into my driveway and sat there, staring at my parents' house next door. All the lights were off. Tomorrow, Mom would have to start figuring out how to buy out a house she'd lived in for 35 years, or lose it entirely. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Violet. I know you probably hate me. I understand. But I need you to know I'm going to refuse the inheritance. I don't want it. None of this is right. I stared at the message. Then I typed back, don't. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. What do you mean? I mean, don't refuse it, not yet. Meet me tomorrow, noon. The address of Thornton Enterprises. Come alone. Okay. I got out of my car and walked to my front door. As I unlocked it, I looked back at Dad's house one more time. A light turned on in the master bedroom. Mom was home, probably packing, probably trying to figure out where she'd go. Inside, I poured myself a drink and sat in my living room, the room Dad had seen through the windows, the success he'd claimed to have engineered. I pulled up my phone and started scrolling through my client list. 3 years of contracts. I found the dates, found the correspondence, found the proposals. Then I started making calls to current clients, to former clients, to competitors who'd lost bids to me. Hey, it's Raymond Thornton. Quick question. Did my father ever contact you before we started working together? I made 23 calls that night, got through to 16 people. Every single one said the same thing. No, we'd heard of your agency through industry reputation. Your proposal was just better. But 7 didn't answer. 7 maybes. 7 possibilities that Dad had been telling the truth. At 2 a.m., my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. Thomas stood there looking worse than I'd ever seen him. I opened the door. He's right, Thomas said without preamble. Everything he said about me. I'm 37 years old and I've got nothing. No skills, no prospects. Dad's been paying me $180,000 a year to do bullshit busy work, and everyone at the company knows it. He laughed bitterly. You know what the VP of operations said to me at the Christmas party last year? He said, must be nice being born lucky. I thought he was talking about being born rich. Now I realize he meant lucky that Dad didn't expect anything from me, that I could coast forever without consequences. Come inside, I said. He followed me to the living room. I poured him a drink. We sat in silence for a minute. Are you going to do it? He asked. The challenge? I don't know. Are you? I don't even know what I'd do. I don't know how to run a company. I've never closed a real deal. Never built anything. I'm 37 and I have the resume of a 22-year-old. Dad did that to you, I said. No. Thomas shook his head. I did that to myself. Dad gave me an easy path and I took it. Every time. I knew I was being lazy. Knew I wasn't learning anything real. But it was comfortable. And I told myself it was smart. Why work hard when you don't have to? Now I see what it cost me. He drained his glass. I'm going to do the challenge. I don't care if I fail. I don't care if Violet ends up with everything anyway. I just need to prove to myself that I can build something, earn something. Will you help me? I looked at my brother. Really looked at him. He'd spent 37 years being the good son, the obedient one, the one who did exactly what Dad wanted, and Dad had hated him for it. Yeah, I said. I'll help you. Even though you don't need to, you've already got your own company, your own success. Maybe. Or maybe Dad was right and everything I built was because of him. Either way, I need to know. Thomas nodded slowly. So we grow his company to $12 million, take our third each, and prove we're not the disappointments he said we are. Something like that. What about Violet? What about her? She seems decent. None of this is her fault. I know. That's the worst part. Thomas stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. Thanks for not giving up on me. Everyone else did a long time ago. You're my brother, I said. That has to mean something. After he left, I sat alone until sunrise, thinking about the challenge. about what it would take to grow a company by $3.3 million in 1 year, about whether I even wanted to. But I knew I didn't really have a choice. Not because I needed the money. I didn't. My agency was doing fine. But because if I walked away, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering if Dad had been right, if I'd really built my success alone, or if I'd been standing on a foundation I didn't know existed. At noon, the next day, I pulled up to Thornton Enterprises. It was a modern building downtown, all glass and steel. Dad had moved the office here 5 years ago. I'd never been inside. Violet was waiting in the lobby. She dressed professionally, slacks and a blazer, trying to look like she belonged here. I could see traces of Dad in her features, the same sharp jawline, same dark eyes. "Thanks for meeting me," she said. "Let's walk." We left the building and headed toward the Riverwalk. It was a cold November day, the kind where your breath fogs and you can't feel your fingers. "I meant what I said," Violet started. "I'm going to refuse the inheritance. I've already talked to Howard about the process." "Don't. Raymond, I can't take $15 million from people I just met, people whose father I apparently destroyed. You didn't destroy anything. He did that himself. Still, it's not right." I stopped walking and turned to face her. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to accept the inheritance, all of it. Then my brother and I are going to do this challenge. We're going to grow that company. And when we succeed, if we succeed, you're going to get your third. Same as us." "Why would you do that?" "Because my father spent his life using money to punish people, to control them, to measure their worth. I'm not doing that. If you refuse the inheritance out of guilt, you're just letting him win one more time. Take the money. Use it for your clinic. Save kids. Be exactly what he said you were. The one good thing that came out of his miserable life." Violet's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to accept this." "You don't have to know. You just have to say yes." She wiped her eyes. "What if you and Thomas fail? What if the company doesn't grow? Then you still keep everything. And honestly, that wouldn't be the worst outcome. At least the money would go somewhere good." "Tell me about your business," Violet said suddenly. "Your agency." I did. I told her about the studio apartment with 3 roommates, about the 80-hour weeks, about every contract I'd fought for and won, about buying the house next to my parents just to prove I could. "Your father called me 3 weeks ago," Violet said when I finished. "He was furious. Said you'd humiliated him in front of the neighbors, that you'd thrown your success in his face. That was the plan. He also said he'd never been more proud of anything in his life." I stopped walking. "He said that?" "Yes. He said you'd become exactly what he'd hoped for. Self-made, driven, successful without his help. He said it proved he was right to be hard on you. That's sick. I know, but I think in his twisted way, he believed he was helping you, pushing you to be better by withholding everything. That's not how parenting works." "No," Violet agreed. "It's not. My mom was the opposite. She gave me everything. Support, encouragement, love, and I still became a doctor. Maybe even more so because I had someone who believed in me." She looked out at the river. "I think your father was broken in ways he never admitted." "My mom used to say he was trying to heal something in himself by being different with me than he was with his legitimate family. Like he thought he could erase his mistakes by getting it right the second time. Did he? Get it right with you? Some parts. He was kind to me, supportive, but he was also living a double life, which meant I only got fragments of him. Birthday phone calls, weekend visits every 6 months. He missed my high school graduation because it conflicted with your brother's. He missed my white coat ceremony because he was at your mother's charity gala. I got the better version of him, but I never got all of him. We walked in silence for a while. "I need to ask you something," I said. "That letter he wrote you, the one about your mother being the love of his life, did you know he felt that way?" "Yes. He told me that once, when I was 16. He was drunk. He said my mom was the only woman who ever made him feel like he was enough, that his marriage was a business arrangement that had gone on too long. I felt so guilty after that, like I was part of some terrible sin. You were a kid. None of it was your fault. Maybe, but I benefited from it. From his guilt money. From being the secret daughter he could pretend was perfect because I only existed in stolen moments. Are you perfect?" Violet laughed. "No. I have $170,000 in student loans. My apartment is a shoebox. I work 60-hour weeks and barely have time to date. Last month I made a diagnosis error that almost killed a patient. I fixed it in time, but it scared the hell out of me. See? Human. Unfortunately, we turned back toward the building. "So we're doing this?" I asked. "All 3 of us?" "I guess we are." Violet paused. "Can I ask you something? Why did you really buy that house? Was it just to prove something to your father?" I thought about it. Honestly, I don't even know anymore. When I signed the contract, I felt like I was winning, like I'd finally beaten him at his own game, but now I just feel empty, like I won a game that didn't matter. "Maybe that's the point," Violet said. "Maybe he was never playing the same game as you. You were trying to prove your worth. He was trying to justify his guilt." We reached the entrance to Thornton Enterprises. Through the glass, I could see employees moving through the lobby, people who'd worked for my father, who'd know Thomas and me as the boss's sons, who probably had opinions about both of us. "Let's go see what we're working with," I said. Inside, we met with the CFO, a woman named Patricia who'd been with the company for 15 years. She laid out the financials in a conference room that smelled like coffee and copy paper. "Current valuation is $8.7 million, Patricia explained, pulling up a presentation on the screen. "Revenue last year was $4 million with a net profit of $2.1 million. Your father ran a lean operation. Good margins, solid client base, minimal debt. What's the growth trajectory been?" I asked. "Flat for the last 3 years, Patricia admitted. "Your father was approaching retirement. He stopped pursuing new business aggressively. We've retained existing clients well but haven't expanded. So we need to add about $3.3 million in value in 1 year," I said. "What's the fastest path to that?" "Depends on the approach. We could pursue rapid client acquisition, which would increase revenue and potentially boost valuation. We could streamline operations to improve profit margins, which makes the company more attractive. Or we could pursue a strategic acquisition, buy a smaller competitor and fold them in, instantly increasing our market share. Thomas had joined us halfway through the presentation. He'd been quiet, taking notes. Now he spoke up. What would Dad have done? Patricia looked uncomfortable. Richard would have said none of the above. He'd have said the company is worth what it's worth, and trying to artificially inflate that for a deadline is bad business. Good thing he's not here then, Thomas said. Over the next week, the three of us, me, Thomas, and Violet, started meeting daily at Thornton Enterprises. Violet had taken a leave of absence from the hospital. I need to understand what I'm inheriting, she'd explained, even if I end up only getting a third. Thomas dove in with surprising intensity. He'd spent years coasting, but now he was working 12-hour days, learning every aspect of the business. He sat with department heads, reviewed every contract, interviewed every employee about what was working and what wasn't. You're actually good at this, I told him, after watching him handle a tense meeting with a client who was threatening to leave. No, I'm not, Thomas said, but I'm learning. Finally, I split my time between my own agency and Thornton Enterprises. It was exhausting, but necessary. I needed to see if I could grow both businesses simultaneously. Needed to prove that my success wasn't dependent on Dad's shadow. By the end of week 2, we had a plan. It was aggressive, maybe too aggressive, but it was the only path to $12 million in 1 year. We acquire Merit Solutions, I proposed in a meeting with Patricia and the senior leadership team. Merit was a smaller marketing firm that complemented Thornton's services. They were struggling financially but had great clients and talented people. They're valued at $2.8 million, but I think we can get them for $2 million cash. We don't have $2 million liquid, Patricia pointed out. No, but we can leverage the company's assets for a loan. Use the existing business as collateral. That's risky, Patricia said. If the acquisition doesn't pay off, we're in debt and no better positioned. Everything about this is risky, Thomas said. But it's the only way. The leadership team voted. It passed barely. 3 in favor, 2 against, 1 abstention. I spent the next month negotiating the acquisition while Thomas worked on integration plans and Violet surprised all of us. She started attending client meetings. At first, I thought she was just observing, learning about the family business she'd inherited. But then she started contributing, asking questions that exposed problems we hadn't seen, suggesting solutions that actually worked. I'm good at reading people, she explained after she helped us save a major contract by identifying that the client was really upset about a billing error, not the quality of work. It's part of being a doctor. You listen to what people say and hear what they mean. By December, we'd closed the Merit Solutions acquisition. It was messy. The integration was harder than expected. We lost 3 employees who didn't want to work for a Thornton. We had to renegotiate contracts, fix broken processes, merge competing teams. But slowly, it started working. The combined company had more capabilities, better market position, and a stronger pipeline. In January, Thomas landed the biggest contract of his life, a 3-year deal with a healthcare company worth $8 million annually. He handled every aspect himself, the pitch, the negotiation, the close. When he walked into the office after signing the papers, the entire team stood and applauded. He called me that night, crying. I did it. I actually did it. You did, I said. You really did. By March, we were ahead of schedule. The company was valued at $11.2 million. We needed another $800,000 to hit the target, but then everything fell apart. One of our largest clients, who represented 20% of our annual revenue, announced they were going with a competitor. The CEO called to apologize, but it was done. Signed contract. The revenue hit would drop our valuation below $10 million. All our progress gone. We can get them back, Thomas insisted in an emergency meeting. Let me talk to them. They've already signed with someone else, Patricia said. It's over. Then we find new clients, Violet said. We have 4 months. We can make up $800,000 in 4 months. Not in this market, Patricia said. New business takes time to develop, time we don't have. I sat there, my mind racing through possibilities. There had to be a way, had to be something we could do. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. Raymond Thornton? A voice said. Yes. This is Gerald Chen from Chen Industries. I'm Violet's grandfather on her mother's side. I heard about Richard's challenge, about what you're trying to do. I'm impressed. I put the call on speaker. Thank you, but we just lost a major client. We're probably not going to make the deadline. I know. That client is now working with one of my companies. I may have encouraged them to make the switch. The room went silent. Violet's face went white. You sabotaged us? I said. I tested you, Gerald corrected. Richard spent 29 years paying my daughter to keep quiet about Violet. He treated her like a shameful secret. When she was dying, he set up a trust fund for Violet, but he made her promise never to contact his real family, never disrupt his life. My daughter agreed because she didn't want Violet to suffer, but I never made that promise. What do you want? I asked. I want to offer you a deal. I'll become a client. A $2 million annual contract. 3 years guaranteed. It'll push your valuation well past $12 million. In exchange for what? In exchange for bringing Violet into the family publicly. No more secret daughter. No more hiding her like Richard did. You acknowledge her. Introduce her to everyone as your sister. Make her a full partner in everything that matters. I looked at Violet. She was crying silently. And if we say no? I asked. Then you fail the challenge. Violet inherits everything anyway, but she'll always be the outsider. The secret shame. Richard's final insult to her mother's memory. Thomas spoke up. We don't need your contract. We'll find another way. No, you won't, Gerald said bluntly. You have 4 months. The math doesn't work. This is the only option. Let us discuss it, I said. We'll call you back. I hung up. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Violet said, I don't want this. Don't let him force you into something you're not ready for. Are you kidding? Thomas said. You've been working alongside us for 5 months. You've earned a place here. The only reason we haven't already introduced you as our sister is because we've been too busy trying to hit an impossible deadline. He's right, I said. This isn't about the contract. This is about us acknowledging something that should have been acknowledged 29 years ago. Your family, that shouldn't be contingent on business deals. But it is, Violet said quietly. That's exactly what this is. A transaction. Just like everything else with your father. She wasn't wrong, but she wasn't entirely right either. What if we called your grandfather back and told him to keep his contract? I said. But we still introduce you publicly as our sister. We still make you a full partner. We do it because it's right, not because of a business deal. Then you fail the challenge, Violet pointed out. Maybe that's okay, Thomas said. Maybe some things matter more than proving something to a dead man. Patricia cleared her throat. For what it's worth, there might be another option. I've been approached by Kendrick Global. They want to acquire Thornton Enterprises. Full buyout. They're offering $15.2 million. Every head in the room turned to her. You're just mentioning this now? I said. It came in this morning. I was going to discuss it in our regular meeting tomorrow. But given the situation, she pulled up the email on her laptop. They want to move fast. They'd close within 60 days. If we sell to them, we win the challenge, Thomas said slowly. The company would be valued at over $15 million, way past the $12 million target. But then none of us would have the company, I pointed out. The whole point was to earn it back from Violet. Actually, Patricia said, the challenge didn't specify that you had to retain ownership. It just said you had to increase the value to $12 million within 1 year. If we sell at $15.2 million, you've technically succeeded. The proceeds would be split according to the terms, 1/3 to each of you. So we'd each get about $5 million, not the $8.7 million we'd hoped for by keeping the company, but still substantial. There's a catch, Patricia continued. Kendrick wants to retain all current leadership. They'd offer positions to each of you as consultants during the transition, but after 1 year, you'd be out. So Dad's company disappears, Thomas said, becomes part of someone else's portfolio. Does that matter? Violet asked. It was a good question. Did it matter? We'd been working for 5 months to save a company that Dad had used as a weapon against us our entire lives. A company he'd cared more about than his own children. Why should we care about preserving it? I need some air, I said. I walked out to the parking lot, Violet following me. We stood by my car, the March wind cutting through our jackets. What do you want to do? She asked. I don't know. What do you want? I asked first. I laughed despite myself. Honestly, part of me wants to sell, take the money, walk away from all of this. But another part of me thinks about the last 5 months, about watching Thomas become a real businessman, about seeing you discover you're good at this, about finally working together as siblings instead of as competitors. We barely know each other, Violet said. True, but I know you better after 5 months than I knew my father after 32 years. She considered this. Gerald will be furious if we sell instead of accepting his deal. Is that a bad thing? He's my grandfather. He's trying to protect me. By sabotaging our client relationships? By forcing us into a transaction? He's using Richard's playbook, Violet admitted. Money and leverage. It's all he knows. Then let's show him there's another way. We went back inside. The team was still in the conference room, arguing about the Kendrick offer. We're going to decline both offers, I announced. Everyone stared at me. The Kendrick buyout and Gerald's contract. We're saying no to both. Then how do we hit $12 million on? Patricia asked. We don't, I said. We missed the deadline. Violet keeps the company as originally planned in Dad's will, but she keeps us on as full partners. Equal stakes, equal say. We build this business together, the right way. I can't just give you ownership, Violet said. That would be gift taxes alone. Then we buy in, Thomas interrupted. We each buy 1/3. Fair market value. We take out loans if we have to. At $8.7 million divided by 3, that's roughly $2.9 million each, Patricia calculated. Neither of you has that kind of capital. My agency is worth about $3.2 million, I said. I could leverage that for a loan, or sell it entirely. You'd give up your business? Violet asked. It's time. I built it to prove I didn't need my father. I've proven that. Now maybe I can build something with my family instead. Thomas nodded. I've got about $400,000 in savings. I can borrow the rest against my future stake in the company, if Violet will sign off on that. This is insane, Patricia said. You're turning down a guaranteed $5 million each to gamble on buying into a company that's valued at less. Yes, the three of us said simultaneously. Patricia stared at us for a long moment. Then she laughed. You three are definitely related, all equally stubborn. Over the next week, we restructured everything. I sold my agency to a competitor for $3.1 million. It hurt more than I expected. That business had been my proof that I could succeed without Dad, but it was also my past. Time to move forward. Thomas secured financing through 3 different banks. He'd leveraged every relationship he'd built over the past 5 months. Violet signed the paperwork making us equal partners in Thornton Enterprises. We legally changed the name to Thornton Chen Enterprises. Violet's mother's name would be part of the company now. Public. Acknowledged. When the 1-year deadline passed, I called Howard. We didn't hit the target, I told him. Company's valued at $11.2 million. We failed the challenge. I see, Howard said. So the company goes entirely to Violet per the original will? Actually, no. Violet sold us each 1/3 for fair market value. We're now equal partners. There was a long pause. That's not what Richard intended. I know, but it's what we intend. He wanted you to fight for it, to prove yourselves. We did. Just not the way he planned. Another pause. Richard would have hated this, you know. The 3 of you working together, sharing everything equally. It goes against everything he believed. Good. Howard actually chuckled. In that case, there's one more thing. Richard left a sealed envelope with me. Instructions to open it only if you miss the deadline. Do you want to know what it says? Not particularly, but you're going to tell me anyway. It's addressed to all 3 of you. Would you like me to read it over the phone or send it? Send it. We'll read it together. That evening, the three of us sat in the conference room where we'd spent so many hours over the past year. The envelope sat unopened on the table. Should we even read it? Thomas asked. We know it's going to be something designed to hurt us. Or maybe it's an apology, Violet offered. One last chance for him to say he was wrong. Dad never apologized for anything, I said. But Violet's right. We should read it. Good or bad, we should know. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single page. Dad's handwriting, dated 2 days before his stroke. I read it aloud. To my children, if you're reading this, you failed. You couldn't grow my company by 30% in 1 year. You couldn't prove you were worth the inheritance I denied you. You couldn't even work together effectively, despite having a common goal and a shared enemy. Me. I'm not surprised. Thomas lacks discipline. Raymond lacks humility. And Violet, despite all her virtues, lacks the ruthlessness necessary for real business success. But here's what you need to understand. I designed this challenge to be almost impossible. The timeline was too short. The target was too high. I knew from the start that you'd probably fail. So why did I do it? Because I wanted you to stop fighting each other and start fighting together. I wanted Thomas to finally learn what it means to work for something. I wanted Raymond to stop needing to prove himself and start needing his family. And I wanted Violet to stop being a secret and start being a daughter. I was a terrible father, a worse husband. I destroyed my first family trying to keep my second family hidden, and destroyed my second family by never fully claiming them. I used money as a weapon because I didn't know how to use words as love. This challenge was my last attempt to fix what I broke. If you failed it, but found each other in the process, then you didn't actually fail. You won something more valuable than any company I built. If you're reading this alone, divided and bitter, then I truly did fail you one last time. But if you're reading this together, then maybe I finally got something right. I'm sorry for everything I did and everything I didn't do. You all deserved better than me. Love, Dad. The silence that followed was deafening. That manipulative son of a bitch, Thomas finally said, but he was crying. We all were. He still couldn't just say it, I said. Even in his final letter, he had to make it part of some game, some lesson. But he wasn't entirely wrong, Violet said softly. We are better together than we were apart. Doesn't excuse 30 years of abuse, Thomas said. No, Violet agreed. But maybe it explains it. Just a little. I folded the letter carefully. What do we do with this? Keep it, Thomas said. Not to remember him fondly, but to remember where we came from, what we overcame. And to remember not to repeat his mistakes, Violet added. If any of us ever have kids, we do better. We're honest. We're present. We use words instead of weapons. Deal, I said. We sat there for a while longer, none of us quite ready to leave. Outside, the city lights were coming on. Thornton Chen Enterprises occupied the top 3 floors of this building now. We'd expanded in the 6 months since restructuring, hired 12 new people, landed contracts in new markets. The company was worth about $9.8 million at last valuation. We'd actually lost value since the challenge ended, but we'd gained something more important. I have news, Violet said suddenly. I wasn't sure when to mention it, but this seems like the right time. What kind of news? Thomas asked. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air. Congratulations, I said carefully, not sure if this was happy news or complicated news. It is happy, Violet confirmed, smiling through tears. It's terrifying and unplanned and probably terrible timing, but it's happy. The father is, well, it's complicated, but I'm keeping the baby. You're going to be a mom, Thomas said wonderingly. The baby will be our niece or nephew, I finished. Violet nodded. Richard's grandchild, though they'll never meet him. Maybe that's for the best, Thomas said, then softer. We'll be better grandparents than he was a father. We'll make sure the kid knows they're wanted, loved, that they don't have to earn their place in the family. We'll make sure they know they're ours, I agreed. No secrets, no shame, just family. And that's exactly what we did. 9 months later, Violet gave birth to a daughter. She named her Claire Rose, Claire after our mother, Rose after Violet's mother. 2 women who'd suffered under Dad's deceptions, honored in one tiny person. Mom cried when she heard the name. She'd been slowly rebuilding her life after the devastation of Dad's death and revelations. She'd sold the house, couldn't afford to buy out Dad's half, just like he'd known. But instead of being broken by it, she'd found a small condo downtown and started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping other women escape from controlling men. I wasted 35 years on someone who never loved me, she told me once. I'm not wasting whatever time I have left. Thomas had transformed completely. He'd moved into a modest apartment, sold the house Dad had bought him, and started living within his means. He was dating someone he'd met at a business networking event, a woman who knew nothing about the Thornton family drama and liked him for who he was, not what he represented. I'm 38 years old and I finally feel like an adult, he'd said. It's about damn time. As for me, I'd found something unexpected. Peace. I'd spent my entire adult life proving I didn't need Dad's help. Now I didn't need to prove anything. The business was growing steadily. My siblings were my partners and friends. I had a niece who would grow up knowing she was loved unconditionally. We held a small ceremony at Thornton Chen Enterprises when Claire Rose was 3 months old. A naming celebration and family acknowledgement. We invited Mom, Gerald, who'd grudgingly accepted our decision and eventually became a valued business advisor, and close friends. During the ceremony, I made a toast. My father spent his life building walls between his 2 families, between success and failure, between love and duty. He believed in scarcity, that there wasn't enough success, money, or love to go around, that for someone to win, someone else had to lose. But Claire Rose here proves he was wrong. She exists because of love that crossed barriers. She's being raised by 3 parents who share responsibilities instead of competing. She'll inherit a business built on partnership, not ownership. And she'll grow up knowing that family isn't about who deserves what. It's about showing up, working together, choosing each other every day. Dad tried to teach us his lessons through deprivation and competition, Instead, we learned different lessons, that collaboration beats rivalry, that transparency beats secrets, and that chosen family is just as real as blood family. To Claire Rose. May she grow up in a world where love isn't conditional and success isn't measured in dollars, and may she never know what it's like to have to earn a place at the table. Everyone raised their glasses. Even Gerald, who still didn't quite understand why we'd turned down his contract, but respected that we'd chosen family over business. Later that evening, after everyone had left, the three of us sat in my living room, the house I'd bought next to my parents' place. Mom had sold her house to a young couple with 2 kids. It had been hard for her, leaving the place she'd lived for 35 years, but she'd stood on my porch watching the moving truck pull away and said, "Good riddance to bad memories." Now my house was the gathering place, the neutral ground where we made decisions and shared meals, and watched Claire Rose learn to hold her head up. "Do you think he'd be proud?" Thomas asked, holding his niece carefully. "If he could see us now?" "Honestly, I don't care," I said. "We're not doing this for him. We're doing it for us, for her." "But do you think he would be?" Thomas pressed. I thought about it, really thought about it, about the man who'd pushed me away while secretly supporting me, who'd hated Thomas for being obedient and hated me for being independent, who'd loved Violet but hidden her like a shameful secret. "I think he'd be confused," I finally said. "Nothing about what we're doing fits his worldview. We're sharing instead of competing. We're transparent instead of secretive. We're choosing relationships over assets. He'd probably think we were being foolish, weak." "And you don't care?" Violet asked. "Not even a little bit." She smiled. "Good, because I talked to Howard last week. There's one more thing Dad left behind, something he didn't include in the will." "What now?" I groaned. "A letter, sealed, addressed to Claire Rose, instructions to give it to her on her 18th birthday." "You've got to be kidding me," Thomas said. "He's trying to manipulate us from beyond the grave for another 18 years? "That was my first thought," Violet admitted. "But then I realized something. We don't have to give it to her. We could destroy it right now, choose to end his influence completely." "But," I prompted, because there was clearly a but. "But maybe it's not our choice to make. Maybe Claire Rose deserves to know who her grandfather was, the good and the bad, the complexity, and then she can decide for herself what it means." "That's very mature of you," Thomas said. "I hate it," but he was smiling. "So we keep the letter?" I asked. "We keep the letter," Violet confirmed, "locked away. And when she's 18, we tell her everything first. About Dad, about us, about how we all found each other. And then we give her the letter and let her decide if she wants to read it. And if she chooses not to," Thomas asked, "then we burn it together and never speak of it again." It seemed like a good plan, a way to honor both the past and the future without letting either one control us. 3 years later, Thornton Chen Enterprises was valued at $16.3 million. We'd surpassed Dad's challenge target without even trying. The company was thriving not because we were desperately chasing growth, but because we'd built something stable, sustainable, based on trust instead of fear. Thomas had become CEO. He'd fought against it at first, insisting he wasn't qualified. But Violet and I had both insisted. We'd watched him grow into the role naturally over the past few years. He had a gift for leadership we'd never seen when he was just going through the motions at Dad's company. Violet had stayed active in the business while also returning to medicine part-time. She'd used her share of the company's success to fund free clinics in underserved communities, just like Dad had predicted in his final letter to her. But she was doing it on her terms, not his. And me? I'd discovered I was actually a decent COO. I handled operations, strategy, and growth. I finally found a balance between the independence I'd craved and the connection I'd needed. We had family dinners every Sunday. Mom would come, sometimes Gerald. Always Claire Rose, who was now a precocious 3-year-old who called all 3 of us uncle and auntie and mommy interchangeably because we all parented her together. One Sunday, she asked about the empty seat at our dinner table. "Who sits there?" she asked, pointing. We all looked at each other. "That's for your grandfather," Violet said carefully. "He died before you were born. Was he nice?" "How do you explain someone like Dad to a child?" "He was complicated," I said. "He made mistakes, big ones. But he also built something that brought your mommy, Uncle Thomas, and Uncle Raymond together. So in a way, you exist because of him. Does he miss me?" Claire Rose asked. My throat tightened. "I think he would have loved you very much, in his own way." She thought about this seriously. Then, "Can we still save him a seat, even if he's gone?" "Yeah," Thomas said, his voice thick. "We can do that." So we did. Every Sunday, there was an empty chair, not as a shrine to Dad, but as a reminder of where we came from, of what we'd overcome, of the family we'd chosen to build instead of the one that had been forced on us. Years passed. The business continued to grow. Claire Rose started school. Mom published a book about surviving narcissistic relationships. Thomas got married to his girlfriend, who'd stuck with him through all the family drama and loved him for the man he'd become, not the man he'd pretended to be. I started dating someone I'd met through work, someone who knew my whole messy story and didn't run away, someone who understood that family could be complicated and that success wasn't always measured in dollars. Violet had another child, a son this time. She named him Thomas Raymond, after her brothers. "Are you kidding?" Thomas said when she told us. "You're naming him after us?" "Dad got to name his kids," Violet said simply. "I'm naming mine after the family I actually want him to emulate." When Thomas Raymond, we called him TR to avoid confusion, was born, we held another ceremony at Thornton Chen Enterprises. This time, the company had grown to occupy an entire building. We'd expanded into new markets, acquired 2 smaller companies, built something that was genuinely valuable, not because we were chasing Dad's challenge, but because we'd created something worth building. At the ceremony, Gerald gave a speech. "I've watched these 3 over the past 7 years," he said. "I've seen them build a business, raise a family, create something out of pain and loss and betrayal, and I've learned something important. Richard was wrong about almost everything. He thought scarcity drove excellence, that deprivation built character, that love had to be earned. But these 3 proved that abundance creates better results, that support builds stronger people, that love should be freely given. They took everything Richard tried to destroy and built something beautiful from it. TR and Claire Rose will never know their grandfather, but they'll know something better. What it means to be part of a family that chooses love over legacy, connection over competition, and each other over everything else. Afterward, Mom pulled me aside. "I need to tell you something," she said. "I've been holding on to it for months, waiting for the right time." "What is it?" "I'm sick. Early stage, but it's there. The doctors say with treatment, I've got a good shot." But it made me think about time, about what I want to say before I run out of chances. My stomach dropped. "Mom, let me finish," she said gently. "Your father stole 35 years from me. He took my youth, my confidence, my sense of self, but he gave me you and Thomas. And through you, I got Violet and Claire Rose and TR. He meant to destroy me, but instead he gave me the tools to rebuild myself into something stronger. I don't forgive him. I never will. But I'm grateful for what came after him, for watching my sons become good men, for gaining a daughter I never knew I needed, for grandchildren who will grow up without his poison. We're going to fight this," I said. "Whatever you need, I know you will. That's what family does. Real family, not the performance your father demanded. Actual showing up, doing the work, being present family." She was right, of course. When she started treatment, we were all there, taking shifts, holding her hair, bringing smoothies, just like I'd done for Emma in that story from long ago, just like family should. The treatment worked. Mom went into remission. We celebrated at yet another Sunday dinner. Claire Rose making a card that said, "Grandma is strong," with crayon drawings of all of us holding hands. Time kept moving forward. Claire Rose turned 10. Started asking questions about her grandfather. Real questions, not kid questions. "Why did he have two families?" she asked one day. We were all there. Me, Thomas, Violet, Mom, and Gerald. We'd agreed years ago that we'd never lie to her about Dad, that she deserved the truth, age-appropriate but honest. Violet took this one, because he was afraid. He made a mistake by having an affair, and then instead of being honest about it, he tried to hide it. And the hiding created more problems, more pain. Was he mean? Sometimes, Thomas said. He used money to control people. He said hurtful things. He made us feel like we had to earn his love. But he also built a successful business, I added. He supported your mom her whole life, even if he didn't do it the way he should have. He was complicated. People usually are. "Do you miss him?" Claire Rose asked. The three of us looked at each other. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Not the dad we had, but the dad we wish we'd had. Does that make sense?" She nodded seriously. Then, "Mom says I have a letter from him, that I'll get it when I'm 18. "That's right," Violet confirmed. "Do you think I should read it?" "That's up to you," Thomas said. "We'll support whatever you decide. What if it's mean? What if he says bad things? Then we'll be there with you," I said. "And we'll remind you that his words don't define you, that you're loved unconditionally, that you'll never have to earn your place in this family." She thought about this. Then, "Okay, I think I'll read it, when I'm ready." 8 years later, Claire Rose turned 18. She'd grown into an incredible young woman, confident, compassionate, driven. She was heading to college in the fall to study social work. She wanted to help families like ours, she said, families broken by secrets and lies. On her birthday, we gathered at Thornton Chen Enterprises. The company was now worth $43, $7 million. We'd expanded internationally, employed over 200 people, built something that mattered. But none of that mattered as much as what happened next. Violet handed Claire Rose the sealed envelope. It had sat in a safe deposit box for 18 years, untouched. "You don't have to read it now," Violet said. "You don't have to read it ever. This is entirely your choice." Claire Rose held the envelope for a long moment. Then she opened it. Inside was a letter, brief, to the point, very dad. She read it silently first, then aloud. "Dear Claire Rose, if you're reading this, you're 18 years old, an adult, and you've grown up in a family that I helped create but never got to meet. I don't know what kind of person you've become. I don't know if you're like your mother, brilliant and compassionate, or like your Uncle Raymond, driven and proud, or like your Uncle Thomas, whatever Thomas becomes, since he's still finding himself as I write this. But I hope you're none of those things. I hope you're entirely yourself. I spent my life trying to control who people became, trying to shape them into what I thought they should be. It was my greatest failure. I created children who resented me, a wife who feared me, and a daughter I couldn't claim. I built an empire of money and loneliness. Don't do what I did. Don't try to control your destiny so much that you destroy your humanity. Don't love conditionally. Don't measure worth in dollars or success in victories over others. And don't forgive me. I don't deserve it. But do better than me. Be better than me. Love openly. Fail gracefully. Choose people over pride. If the three of them, your mother and uncles, managed to build something together after everything I did to keep them apart, then maybe there's hope for all of us. Maybe families can be built from broken pieces. Maybe love can grow in soil poisoned by betrayal. You're proof of that. You exist because broken people refuse to stay broken. Because siblings chose each other over bitterness. Because love, real love, doesn't follow the rules I tried to impose. I'm sorry I never got to meet you, but I'm glad you'll never have to meet me. You'll only know me through stories, through warning tales, through the example of what not to become. That's probably for the best. Be good, Claire Rose. Be better than all of us. With complicated love, your grandfather. The room was silent when she finished. Claire Rose folded the letter carefully and looked up at all of us. Her family, broken and rebuilt and stronger for it. He was right about one thing, she said. You all did build something better from broken pieces. You took his worst qualities and created their opposite. His control became your collaboration. His secrets became your transparency. His conditional love became your unconditional acceptance. She paused. I'm glad I read this. Not because it gives me closure or makes me forgive him, but because it helps me understand where you all came from, what you overcame, what you chose to build instead. What do you want to do with it now? Violet asked. Claire Rose walked to the empty chair we'd saved for Dad at every family gathering for 18 years. She placed the letter on it. I think we should keep it there, she said, as a reminder, not of him, but of us, of what we chose to become despite him. And that's what we did. The letter stayed on the empty chair, a physical reminder that the past existed but didn't control us, that we'd built something new, something better. Thornton Chen Enterprises continued to grow. Claire Rose joined the company after college, bringing fresh ideas and new energy. TR was showing signs of following in his mother's footsteps, brilliant, compassionate, driven to help people. Thomas and I both eventually stepped back from day-to-day operations, letting the next generation take over. We'd done what we'd set out to do, prove we were more than our father's failures, build something that mattered, create a family based on choice rather than obligation. On what would have been Dad's 80th birthday, we gathered for our Sunday dinner. All of us. 3 generations of a family that shouldn't exist, but does. A family built on broken promises and rebuilt with chosen love. We raised our glasses to the empty chair, not to honor the man who'd sat in it, but to celebrate the space he'd left behind, the space we'd filled with something better, something real. To family, I said. To family, they all echoed. And in that moment, surrounded by people who chose to love each other, I finally understood what success really meant. It wasn't the house I'd bought next to my parents, wasn't the agency I'd built or sold, wasn't even the company we'd grown together. It was this, these people, these Sunday dinners, these chosen relationships, this complicated, messy, beautiful family we'd created from the wreckage of the one we'd been born into. Dad had said I'd built my success on his foundation, that I'd never be sure which parts were really mine. He'd meant it as a curse, a final knife in the back, but he was wrong, because the only foundation that mattered was the one we'd built together, the one made of honesty and vulnerability and showing up even when it was hard. The one that said worth wasn't measured in dollars but in presence, in choosing each other, in doing better than the generation before. That foundation was entirely ours, and it would hold for generations to come. As I looked around the table at my brother who'd found his strength, at my sister who'd found her family, at Mom who'd found her voice, at the children who'd grown up knowing they were loved without condition, I realized something. Dad had been right about one thing, though not the way he'd meant it. I hadn't made it without his money. I'd made it without him, and that made all the difference.